It's Saturday the 1st of March. I'm Jamie East, and this was a week that saw Ukraine mark 3 years of Russia war, European leaders visit the White House, German elections in the spotlight, and the mysterious death of Gene Hackman. Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
But not the news. This week marked the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with Russia continuing to launch drone and missile strikes at targets across the country. And in a sign of changed times, US President Donald Trump continued to slam Ukrainian President Zelensky, demanding he signed the rare earth deal and instructing his surrogates to downplay Russia's role in starting the war in 2022. Zelensky responded to Trump's claim that Zelensky was a dictator and made a remarkable proposal.
If it is for the peace of Ukraine, if you need me to leave this chair, I'm ready to do that. And I also can exchange it for NATO membership for Ukraine.
It remains to be seen if anyone takes him up on the offer, but with the US and Russia due to meet again in 2 weeks, Vladimir Putin's press spokesman Dmitry Peskov was keen to keep negotiations going without any representation from Europe or Ukraine.
Our presidents reached an agreement during a phone conversation. Therefore, it is important for us that nothing hinders our ability to carry out the political will of the two heads of state and move forward with the peace process.
13 world leaders travelled to Kyiv on Monday to support embattled Zelensky in a show of solidarity, including Canadian PM Justin Trudeau, along with his Swedish, Danish and Spanish counterparts. Zelensky was grateful for the support and keen that Russia be held to account.
We'll never forget it, and we can't forget it. I hope that our partners on the same page with us, and not only hope, I see it, that people who began this war, who unprovoked, will answer.
Putin was busy blaming Zelensky for getting in the way of the peace talks between Russia and the United States, but EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was unimpressed.
The war in Ukraine remains the most central and consequential crisis for Europe's future. Putin is trying harder than ever to win the war on the ground. His goal remains Ukraine's capitulation. And we know what could happen next, because it has already happened before.
This week also saw widespread international criticism of the US decision to vote with Russia against a UN resolution on Ukraine. The move appalled Ukraine's allies, and Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton warned this could be the beginning of the end for NATO. Labour's Pat McFadden was pushing back on Trump and Putin's argument that the war only began because of NATO expansion.
It's an argument I reject. NATO is there for the defence of Europe and the United States, the collective defence of its member states. This is a scare story sometimes put up by the Russians themselves.
And as Trump attempts to recover money the US sent to Ukraine, the UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy says it's time to act more decisively when it comes to making Russia pay a price for starting the war.
Europe has to act quickly, and I believe we should move from freezing assets to seizing assets.
Zelensky confirmed that he was heading to Washington on Friday to sign what Trump described as a very big agreement. Leaked copies of the agreement on rare earths suggested the US will set up a joint reconstruction investment fund and will support efforts to get security guarantees, but doesn't appear to offer any concrete American assistance. Speaking in Kyiv, Zelensky said he's still hopeful that the deal's just the start of a bigger conversation.
Of course, this agreement is about economics. But I ask for there to be at least an understanding that we are seeing things the same way, that all of it is part of future security guarantees.
Russia and the US met again in Istanbul on Thursday to discuss diplomatic relations between the countries and not necessarily to discuss Ukraine. But Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov has preemptively ruled out the idea of Russia agreeing to European or NATO troops serving any kind of peacekeeping roles. He also didn't sound like Russia would be returning any territory.
Some say, well, there were ideas, let's leave the line of contact. This is Russian, this is Ukrainian. Firstly, this will not happen. We have a constitution based on the will of the people.
European leaders were certainly busy this week focusing on a charm offensive for Donald Trump. Both French President Macron and UK PM Keir Starmer travelled to Washington in a bid to undo some of the Russian influence on the US president and attempt to shore up relations. Trump was, however, dismissive, saying they hadn't done anything to stop the war. Macron was first up, and it was a delicate diplomatic mission complete with the classic arm-wrestling handshake and Macron gently but firmly correcting Trump on a number of points. He emphasised that Russia should pay the price for starting the war and corrected the US president when he asserted that Europe had loaned money to Ukraine, pointing out that it was in fact donated. Trump remained fixated on getting the deal for Ukraine's rare earths completed and taking credit for the peace talks.
We're helping Ukraine like nobody's ever helped Ukraine before. And I can say this, if I didn't become president, Ukraine would right now still be at a level where there would be no even thinking about a peace.
Trump also called for Europe to play a more central role in Ukraine's security, as the idea of a European peacekeeping force seems to be gaining traction. In advance of his visit to the White House, Tuesday saw Sir Keir Starmer announcing what he called the biggest sustained rise in defence spending since the Cold War.
I have long argued that in the face of ongoing and generational challenges, European countries must do more for their own defence. It is a generational challenge, of course it is, but one we must now take on.
The move will see defence spending rise by £13 billion to 2.5% of GDP and then to 3% in the next Parliament, which should please the US President. The savings, however, come from deep cuts to the UK's foreign aid budget, and Mark Malloch-Brown, former Deputy Secretary-General of the UN, told the BBC the cuts to aid will have a real impact.
For many poor people in the world, this is really almost close to a death sentence. You know, these are life-saving programs.
Trump held his first full cabinet meeting on Wednesday, which featured an opening prayer and a lengthy question and answer session with his favourite reporters. He called America bloated, fat and disgusting, talked about his new scheme to sell gold cards to immigrants for $5 million apiece, and appeared to suggest that China could use force to take Taiwan. He also had thoughts about the European Union, as he promised to implement 25% tariffs on the trading bloc.
The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
The meeting also featured the unelected head of the Department of Governmental Efficiency, Elon Musk, who was asked to say a few words. He says his department's looking to cut $1 trillion in waste and fraud before September, even though his results have so far been pretty unimpressive.
We will make mistakes. We won't be perfect. But when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally cancelled very briefly was Ebola prevention.
When Keir Starmer finally arrived at the White House on Thursday, his goal was twofold: to help shift Donald's view on Ukraine away from his original pro-Putin stance, and secondly, to try and avoid Trump tariffs for the UK economy. He pulled out the big diplomatic guns and presented Trump with a unique personal letter.
It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King. It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented.
And that says at Windsor. That's
Yes.
really something.
Yes. What I haven't got yet is your answer.
The answer is yes.
It was a well-thought-out move which seemed to land with the US president, and a warm and positive atmosphere carried through to the press conference. Trump floated the idea of a trade deal with the UK rather than rattling a sabre over sanctions, and reflected on his love of the UK and his golf properties.
I have a great warm spot for your country.
And our trade, obviously, is fair and balanced, and in fact, you've got a bit of a surplus, so we're in a different position there. And obviously, we've contributed hugely in relation to Ukraine, and taken together with Europe, there's about 50%
It'll
of what's
work
gone
out.
in.
Away from Ukraine and Trump, Tuesday saw more bad news for UK households as energy regulator Ofgem announced the price cap will increase again in April. It's expected to rise by 6.4%, which will add about £111 to the average household bill for 22 million of us across England, Wales and Scotland. According to the regulator, this is because of wholesale energy costs and inflation, and they advise customers to switch to a fixed tariff now if they can. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband says the government will pitch in to help, or so he hopes.
This will be very worrying news for many families, but this government is determined to act. And we're going to take action by putting forward proposals for an extra 2.7 million families to get £150 off bills next winter as part of the Warm Homes discount.
Before Keir Starmer's diplomatic trip to see Trump, there was Prime Minister's question time in the Commons. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was on the attack over the controversial Chagos Islands deal with Mauritius, which appears to need Donald's approval before it goes ahead. She was keen that the Prime Minister shouldn't use the newly increased defence budget to pay for the deal. She also attempted to claim credit for Labour's announcement on increases in defence spending and corresponding cuts in foreign aid.
Over the weekend, I suggested to the Prime Minister that he cut the aid budget, and I'm pleased that he accepted my advice.
I'm going to have to let the Leader of the Opposition down gently. She didn't feature in my thinking at all.
After an intense campaign from Elon Musk and JD Vance, the world watched nervously as Germany went to the polls on Sunday. The MAGA crew had been pushing hard for the far-right AfD party, with Musk speaking by Zoom at one of their rallies and tweeting incessantly about the need for radical change. In the end, it wasn't enough to see the AfD in government, but they did poll at around 20%, which is their best ever result. The Conservative Christian Democratic Union won 28% of the vote, which puts them in pole position to form a coalition. Former Chancellor Olaf Scholz of the Social Democratic Party conceded defeat as they came in third with 16% of the vote. The most likely new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz of the CDU, addressed the nation.
We need to get a viable government together in Germany, a government capable of working based on a majority, because, ladies and gentlemen, the world outside is not going to wait for us. We have to be swift in our discussions so that we can do the right thing. So it's understood that once again in Germany there is a reliable government.
The coalition talks are due to begin, but the Conservative CDU's casting vote won't be going to the AfD. Friedrich Merz was standing firmly with Ukraine on Monday and warning that it is 5 minutes to midnight for Europe as he hopes to wean Germany off a dependence of the US. Meanwhile, former Chancellor Scholz addressed supporters and expressed his thanks.
For me, it was a great honour. It was an honour to win the last general election. I was responsible at the time for the success, but now, of course, I'm also responsible for the defeat. That's something I want to emphasise.
Still to come on the Standout 7, huge winners at the SAG Awards, and we pay tribute to a host of big names who passed this week. Right after this. Welcome back.
The Science, Innovation and Technology Committee heard from social media firms on Tuesday as part of its ongoing investigation into harmful algorithms in social media. Representatives from Meta, Google, TikTok and X were all present in the House of Commons committee room to testify about whether or not their algorithms do spread harmful content and what efforts they're making to moderate it. They weren't exactly helpful though, and Chair of the committee, Chionwora MP, says the responses from big tech were frustrating and failed to answer some of the significant questions around the Southport riots and the Online Safety Act. The former journalist and now MP for Rochdale attempted to get to the bottom of the former Twitter's change of heart on right-wing figures without much success.
Why have far-right influencers like Tommy Robinson and self-styled misogynists like Andrew Tate, why have they been readmitted to X?
So shortly after the acquisition, we instituted an amnesty program that allowed accounts who had previously been suspended to reapply for reinstatement.
This wasn't the only government investigation into the world of online content, as Thursday saw a new review by Baroness Burton which proposed that degrading, violent and misogynistic pornography should be banned in the UK. The study uncovered alarming evidence, including that non-fatal choking of women during sex in porn had led to an uptick of the offence in the real world, even though it's already a criminal offence if carried out without consent. The review proposes sweeping new powers for content regulator Ofcom, and Technology Secretary Peter Kyle says there may be more that can be done.
We do have power to prevent people having this. We have the powers to prevent people getting the access to it, even if the material is provided from elsewhere. We just need to find ways of making sure that that is done efficiently and effectively. And if I have to adapt the law, then of course I'll act as swiftly as I can.
Sunday night saw the Screen Actors Guild Awards in Hollywood, which was streamed live around the world on Netflix. This was the last major awards before the Oscars this weekend, and host Kirsten Bell was in great form, even performing a Frozen parody. Shogun and Wicked were the favourites going into the event with 5 nominations each, but Wicked came away empty-handed, while Shogun picked up 4. The awards went to some familiar faces, Demi Moore, Zoe Saldana and Kieran Culkin, all continuing their winning streaks. A surprise winner in the male actor category, however, was Timothée Chalamet for A Complete Unknown.
The truth is, I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats. I'm inspired by the greats here tonight. This doesn't signify that, but it's a little more fuel. It's a little more ammo to keep going. Thank you so much.
Jane Fonda received a Lifetime Achievement Award and took a moment to stand up for the forces of good.
Make no mistake, empathy is not weak or woke. And by the way, woke just means you give a damn about other people.
This week saw a remarkable number of celebrity deaths, including a mysterious incident involving acting great Gene Hackman. The week started with the death of classically trained pianist and multiple Grammy winner Roberta Flack, who died aged 88. She'd been diagnosed with motor neuron disease in 2022 and had been unable to perform in recent years. She was probably most famous for Killing Me Softly, which was later covered by the Fugees, but her first big hit was The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, which was #1 in the States for 6 weeks exactly 52 years ago. Flack was also the first woman to win consecutive Grammys, with double wins in 1973 and 74, followed by a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2020. She was also a passionate educator with her own music school in New York. Rest in peace, Roberta.
I'm honest and sincere and reliable and confident and ambitious and generous and an animal lover and a children lover and a people lover and a world lover. And I can sing.
One of the original presenters on Classic FM died on Wednesday, aged 78. Henry Kelly, whose morning show was on air for 11 years from 92, was a familiar voice to millions, with his distinctive Irish accent winning him fans and a Sony Radio Award as National Radio Broadcaster of the Year. He was born in Dublin and moved to the UK in 1976 and presented news show The World Tonight before he moved into light entertainment and presenting shows including Game for a Laugh. There were tributes from a wide range of people, including Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who praised him for making a huge contribution to journalism and broadcasting in Ireland and the UK. Here he is talking about the iconic game show Going for Gold and how he got the job as host. Rest in peace, Henry.
So I went in and I was given the Going for Gold cards, and I was asked to do one of the slots in the programme. And to be quite honest, and this is not a lie, I thought no more about it. And a few weeks later, I got a phone call to say, the BBC now think that they'd like you to do the programme. I said, what programme? I'd completely forgotten about it.
And then there was what appears to be a tragic incident on Thursday, as police discovered the bodies of actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. They, along with their German Shepherd dog, were found in their home in Santa Fe, and it appeared they'd been dead for some time. A formal investigation's now been launched. Gene was one of the great actors of his generation, winning 2 Academy Awards, 4 Golden Globes and 2 BAFTAs over the course of his long career. He played a number of iconic roles, including Lex Luthor in the first Superman movie, as Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, and as the sheriff in Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. He spoke to Terry Wogan back in 1986 about his approach to art and acting. Rest in peace, Gene.
Do you do it for the art or for the money?
Absolutely art. The money comes secondary. It's funny that after Superman, the first Superman, I didn't really like my work in it after the film was over. And I decided to stop. And then when I wanted to come back to work, it took a long time to get a job. It's kind of fun, and I really enjoy it.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.